Hey everybody, welcome back to Rink's Garage. In our last video we were working on this 1974 International. Got her running, but she does not want to idle. So today we're going to pull that carb off, see if we can rebuild her. It's a 2210 Holley 2-barrel, and we got a kit for it right there, so I'll get her ripped off and we'll see what's inside it. Alright, we got the carburetor off, and if you need to identify yours, like Holley's have a stamp in the front here, so this one says R6621A, which I just googled it, come back as a 2210 Holley. So first thing we're going to do is clean her up a little bit, just because it's kind of full of gunk, so I'm just going to set her in here and spray her down, and I got a nylon bristle brush. Clean off as much as we can, just to get rid of some of the crusty dirt. We'll wash everything individually too, so I'll get that cleaned up and we'll start taking her apart. Alright, now that we got her cleaned up a little bit, most of the grease off it, we can start taking it apart. So your rebuild kit will generally come with an instruction sheet, parts list, and generally you want to take it apart in the order of the parts list. So basically I'm just going to strip this thing down, starting at 1 all the way down to 37 till we get her all blown apart. And then we'll clean everything up, and along the way we'll see what's bad, what's good. And we do have the whole kit here to put it back together, so I'll get this thing blown apart and we'll take a look at everything. One other thing, when you're taking it apart, it's good to lay everything in order as you take it apart, because when you put it back together it just makes it a lot easier. Also helps if you make a video of it, because then if you forget something, you can go back and watch. Well, she's all blown apart. As you can see, there was a lot of gunk in there. A couple things I did notice: both the main jets completely plugged. A lot of gunk down in the bowl, so when you do a big cleanup on it, you can do that however you like. If you got a sonic cleaner, throw them in there. Carb cleaner, little soft bristle brush. Probably what I'm going to do. I don't have a sonic cleaner unless I borrow one, so. But before you take the carburetor apart, make sure you got some cleaning fluid or carb cleaner. So I'm gonna have to run to town and get that, and then we'll get everything cleaned up, and then we'll put her back together. Well, it's the next morning. I got everything cleaned up. I was able to find some carb cleaner last night. I had a couple of old bottles that I dropped and broke the top off, so I popped a hole in them and dumped them in a bucket. If you're going to do that, make sure you let all the propellant out, so if you tip them upside down and just press them on something, it'll let all the air out, and then you can poke a hole in it. I had two full ones that I evidently dropped right when I bought them. So I dumped them in a bucket and I set the main 3 pieces in there overnight. And that's what it looks like this morning. Brushed them all up. Went along and blew air through each passageway. Little carb cleaner and air. Cleaned everything out. Cleaned out my jets. So now you can see through them. I just used a torch tip cleaner. Cleaned them out and blew them out. And we do have some new parts. So the kit comes with the new power valve. So this will get replaced. And then new needle and seat. And then some gaskets. And then the new seal for the accelerator pump. We'll have to stick that on when we get to it. That goes on the end of there. But basically we're just going to put it back together the way we took it apart. Go back down my row how I set them out. So first thing we'll get the base. We'll put the gasket on. There is 2 gaskets. This kit does 2210s and 2245s, so there's going to be a couple extra parts that we're not going to use, but basically just match it up with what you took out of it or whatever doesn't come up the holes. So throw this gasket on and we'll throw that part back on, screw it together, and then we can start putting all our little piece parts in. Basically when you're putting it together, you just want to make sure you got all your surfaces as clean as possible. Make sure all the holes line up. And then put our screws in. Once you got all your screws in, we can put our idle air screws back in. I like to wind them all the way in just till they're bottom out, snug, not too tight, just till you feel resistance. Right there, and then I back it out a turn and a half. It's a good starting point, and we can adjust it once we get around the truck. Like so. Then we can flip her over. Drop our discharge needle back in. And then we can put our jets back in and our power valve, which we got a new power valve, so get them stuck in. So now after we got our jets back in, we can set this off to the side and start putting this guy back together. So, I don't think I showed it before, but I took the power valve plunger out, which sits down in here because it was stuck. Which this runs the power valve on here, on the power valve, so when it has a lot of vacuum, it sucks that down, lets more gas in when there's less vacuum. But in order to get this out, it's just staked in there, so it's kind of a press fit. If you want to get this one out, basically all you gotta do is push the plunger down, pull the spring down, and let go of it 2-3 times, and it'll pop out. So we need to re-stake that in there. So basically I'm gonna push it down in there. There's a little washer, and we're just gonna tap around the edge of it with a punch just to bend the middle over just a little bit. To hold it in there so it doesn't fall out. Now it'll stay in there, and it's moving freely, so that's good. Next we got to put our float, needle, and seat in, so we'll grab the new needle and seat. Comes with a gasket. Slide him in there. Drop our needle in. And then we can put our float back on. Which just sits in there, and then it's got this little rod you just got to push through. Put it on the right way. Like so. Just tap our rod through. Now, that needle and seat moves up and down freely. And then we can do our accelerator pump, which we need to put the new washer on the end of it. So we got our spring, and then this little rubber washer is just pushed over the end, so we can pull him off and put our new plunger washer on like that. Then we'll need to put him back down in there, push it through over to this side, and then we can put our shaft back in. He slides in, flips over, slides back through there like that. And we can put our nut back on here. Now we're ready to put these two back together. One thing we do want to do before we slide together is lube up the accelerator pump. So just take a little light oil, run around that rubber piece before you slide her in there. Better put a gasket on it. Same with this, make sure this gasket's got a couple little fine pieces we'll clean off first. Just tailing off the, we don't want that getting sucked down in the carburetor. So once again, we lay it on, make sure everything lines up. Then we can line up our accelerator pump in there. Might be easier to stick the gasket on this side. First. Like that. Get her on down there tight. There's opposite corners have a little guide pin shoulder to go in. We can put our bolts back in. And there's a long one, goes in the middle. Everything else is the same size. And we'll tighten them down. Once we got all that bolted together, we can put our inlet port back in. We should have a new washer for that. Then all we got left to do is bolt our linkage back on, which is going to be a little bit different on every truck. Just put it back on the way you took it off. Well, we got her all put back together. So, went ahead and cleaned up the intake. Throw our new gasket on. Bolt the carb down. Hook some gas up. No, fill the bowl up through the vent. We'll see if she runs any better. Well, we got her installed. Everything's hooked up. I filled the bowl up. We got our temporary gas tank hooked up. Batteries hooked up. So let's see what happens. Before, she would not idle unless it was full choke. So spin her over and hopefully she'll run. Get her all smoky in here again. Well, that's much better. I didn't hook the manual choke back up because I broke it, so she's just running off the engine choke there. Definitely better. Runner now. Now we just need to get some tires. Maybe take her for a spin. Shut her off before she gets too smoky in here. Actually, motor sounds real good, and I haven't even set timing yet or anything, so I'm happy with that, but not that too much to them carburetors. So like I said, most of them will come with this. Basically, if you got a nice clean spot to lay it out when you take it apart, put it back together the same way, pretty easy. So that's going to do it for today. Hope this video will help you, and thanks for watching. See you next time.